They called them lightning rods, decorative finials, or simple architectural flourishes. But across every major city in the world, starting around the turn of the 20th century, crews began systematically removing thousands of metal spires from the rooftops of the most magnificent buildings ever constructed. These were buildings so ornate and impossibly detailed that modern engineers admit they could not replicate them today, even with unlimited budgets. If you walk through any major city built before 1900 and look up, you will notice a skyline that has been smoothed, flattened, and modernized. But if you pull out photographs from the late 19th century, you will see something radically different. Every significant structure bristled with metal, including copper spires, brass finials, and iron conductors reaching 50, 80, or sometimes 150 feet into the sky. There was not just one or two per building, but dozens. The Cincinnati Music Hall had 47 individual spires before 1920, but today it has 8. The old Philadelphia Mint had 23, and today it has none. The official story tells us these removals were for obsolete technology, aesthetic updates, and modernization. However, if you look into the actual municipal records from New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and London between 1890 and 1920, you will find something strange. The removal orders do not cite aesthetics. Instead, they explicitly cite safety concerns related to unauthorized energy collection. That exact phrase appears in removal permits across 12 different cities. Unauthorized energy collection, not structural concerns or wind damage. Furthermore, in almost every case, the buildings that lost their spires also lost their original purpose within 5 years. Libraries became administrative offices, concert halls became warehouses, and grand hotels became apartment buildings, as if removing the spires removed whatever made these buildings truly function in the first place. What if those spires were never decorative at all? What if they were functional components of a technology so advanced and widely distributed that erasing it required a coordinated effort across every industrialized nation on Earth? What if the grandest buildings of the 19th century were actually machines? Consider the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, which showcased over 200 temporary buildings, each topped with elaborate copper and brass spires reaching heights of 80 to 150 feet. The official explanation for their height was grandeur and visibility, status symbols for a growing nation. But the records do not explain why those spires were all grounded through complex copper networks running beneath the fairgrounds. These networks consumed over 40 tons of copper wiring for temporary buildings that would be demolished within months. That's 80,000 pounds of expensive conductive metal installed into structures with a short lifespan, costing a massive fortune adjusted for inflation today. The fair used an average of 12,500 kilowatt-hours per day, which was enough electricity to power a city of 150,000 people at the time. Yet the power plant built for the exposition had a documented capacity of only 8,000 kilowatts. The math simply doesn't work unless the spires were doing something the official story hides. The very same year, Nikola Tesla demonstrated wireless power transmission, explaining that the Earth itself acts as a massive capacitor, storing electrical charge between its surface and the ionosphere 60 miles overhead. Tall, conductive spires, properly grounded, could tap into atmospheric electricity and telluric currents flowing through the ground beneath our feet. Tesla was not inventing this principle from scratch. He was demonstrating a technology that already existed and was built into thousands of structures across the world. Look at the Gilded Age architecture built between 1850 and 1900, like the Capitol Building, the Philadelphia City Hall, Grand Transit Terminal, or the Paris Opera House. Every single one featured multiple metal spires connected through internal copper frameworks to deep foundation systems extending far below what structural engineering required. The Philadelphia City Hall, completed in 1901, featured 36 smaller spires arranged in precise geometric patterns surrounding its central tower, with each spire connected to a copper grounding system extending 167 feet below street level. The original construction documents include detailed specifications for over 14 miles of thick copper cable running from the spires through the building's walls and floors and into a sub-basement grounding array made of massive copper plates arranged in a star pattern. The official notes claimed this was for lightning protection, but standard lightning protection does not require 14 miles of copper. It requires one good path to ground. This was an active energy harvest. The Woolworth Building in New York originally had 47 individual spires before renovations reduced that number to 3, and its foundation included a copper grounding system extending deep below street level. The architectural firm specified that this grounding system must be completed before any above-ground construction could even begin, prioritizing it over the foundation itself. The Singer Building, completed in 1908, featured a central spire surrounded by 18 smaller spires arranged in 3 concentric rings, each topped with a massive copper finial. The building's electrical system documented power consumption that was 3 times higher than comparable buildings of the same size and occupancy, raising the question of where that extra electricity was going or where it was coming from. When it was demolished in 1968, a specific provision required the complete removal and documentation of all 47 tons of copper grounding systems before structural demolition could even begin, which were then transported under guard to a salvage facility and purchased by an undisclosed government contractor, never to be resold on the public market. Between 1915 and 1925, coordinated spire removal projects took place across dozens of major American cities. The justification was always insurance liability or wind load, but the timing reveals a deliberate pattern. These removals happened within a tight window across unconnected cities following identical procedures. The funding for these removal orders came from a centralized source, insurance companies, specifically the National Board of Fire Underwriters. In 1915, they issued a bulletin claiming that metal spires posed an unacceptable fire risk due to lightning strikes. However, the bulletin's own data showed that there were very few documented cases of lightning-related fires in buildings with spire systems compared to thousands of fires in buildings without them. The spires were actually preventing fires because they were properly grounded. Removing them made the buildings more vulnerable, not less. The true motivation becomes clear when you follow the money. Fire insurance premiums increased drastically in cities that complied with the spire removal recommendations, and buildings that kept their spires faced policy cancellations. Within 18 months of losing their spires, these buildings underwent electrical system installations. The spires were being replaced by an entirely new system that required permits, licensing, and monthly billing, something that could be metered, controlled, and monetized. Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island was designed to broadcast free electricity to receivers anywhere on Earth using a massive copper hemisphere and a deep grounding system driven into the water table to tap into the Earth's natural electromagnetic field. When his investor discovered that Tesla intended to broadcast power freely to anyone with a receiver, the funding was withdrawn. The tower was eventually demolished under the justification of national security during the First World War, and the government dismantled it piece by piece, excavating the foundation and confiscating all the copper grounding systems. They did not just demolish the tower, they erased it. Over 200 similar towers in buildings with identical architectural features, deep grounding systems, and copper networks existed across North America long before Tesla's work. The 1904 St. Louis World's Fair featured the Palace of Electricity, which had 18 spires connected to a central copper mass extending deep into the ground. It consumed far more energy than the exposition's power plant could document maximum capacity for, indicating it was generating its own power through the spire system. Immediately after the fair closed, the spires were removed weeks before the rest of the building was torn down. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake provides an accidental case study. After the quake and subsequent fires, an emergency order required the immediate removal of all metal spire systems and the excavation of all copper grounding systems before reconstruction could begin. Over 140 tons of copper grounding cable was stripped from the foundations and sold under a contract that prohibited its resale on the domestic market for 20 years, causing the copper to disappear entirely. If you examine the architectural drawings of these major historical buildings, the spires are never random. They are positioned at specific intervals that align with geometric patterns, Fibonacci sequences, and harmonic divisions. Some match the resonant frequencies of the Earth's Schumann resonance, corresponding perfectly to the exact frequencies where the Earth's electromagnetic field resonates most strongly. This was a global template followed by different architects in different countries. The rise of centralized electrical utility companies required metered consumption to build a profit model, and free atmospheric energy was a direct threat to that monopoly. Lobbying efforts quickly classified these independent energy systems as unsafe and illegal under new electrical codes, effectively making it illegal to generate your own electricity without expensive, hard-to-obtain permits. Inventors who continued to work on atmospheric energy collection devices faced laboratory fires, equipment seizures, or sudden deaths. The metal spires they ripped off every old building were never decorative ornaments. They were functional collectors of free ambient energy. The fact that we have been taught to see them as mere decorations is one of the most successful cover-ups in industrial history.